Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second part of our Exploring the Future of Work series. Last week, we had a discussion on what it would look like with regards to co-working, private offices, working from home, and the main takeaway from that is that people are still looking for that connection and of the human connection where you still need to go into the office to some degree. And not just strictly work from home. It's going to evolve still. We don't know how. There's a lot of predictions, but we can only hope for the best, right? This morning, we'll be talking more about safety and coming back into the office. It's one of the main concerns that we've heard from people, and one of the things that we've heard and feedback from our members as well, and from other co-working operators that I've been having chats with, is that how do you make people feel safe when they want to come back into the office? With COVID not going anywhere anytime soon, and we're hoping for the vaccine to come, but with that still waiting in the wings, we need to make sure that everyone who comes back into the offices feel safe and secure. This morning, we have two speakers, Sullivan from Yordesk and Kristy Bayley from Faethm. I'll just give you a brief intro of who they are and what they do. So Carl is the CEO of Yordesk, one of Australia's first co-working space for creative businesses. He founded Yordesk in 2011. It's a family business with a focus on building a network of beautiful co-working spaces that support local businesses in creative fields, and to support the swelling numbers of freelancers and consultants that are transforming how we work. With one primary co-working space at Yordesk Town Hall, Carl has been in the co-working industry for over 9 years now and has experienced the market come to terms with the services offered by co-working spaces. He's seen the demand swell as the concept hit mainstream, watched as various co-working iterations are launched every week, and now as businesses surviving COVID. Carl has a passion for both the running of co-working spaces, the design of work environments, and any discussion around the future of work. Welcome, Carl. I'll just clap on behalf of everyone who's on mute.
Thank you, Lauren.
Next, we have Kristy. Kristy Bayley is the head of operations at Faethm, which is an AI platform that predicts the impact of dynamic forces such as AI, COVID-19, and RPA on current and future jobs in the workplace. Kristy has global startup experience across all facets of operations, with an added focus on government partnerships, global expansion, employee mobility, and business performance. She is a passionate advocate for women in tech and knowledge sharing, and as an active Rotarian, she has an ongoing commitment to helping others and creating strong communities. Welcome, Kristy.
Thanks, Lauren.
Cool, great introductions, guys.
Well, thank you.
So today we wanted to invite someone who represents the co-working industry, who runs their own co-working space, and talk about what they did during this time. And we also wanted to talk about someone from the business side, the client side, the startups, who are experiencing, probably have some concerns going back into the office, their teams, and what they did during this time. So maybe let's start with both of you guys, just talking about what was your situation when it all started to lock down around March. What did your businesses have to do when we were all forced to stop? Maybe Carl, you can start.
Sure. So it's funny because I remember I was actually at the wedding in mid-March, and it was sort of the first event I attended where people were really starting to be concerned about social distancing, being concerned about sort of like where their work might be. And I remember at that event, two major things happened. The first one was New Zealand announced their lockdown strategy. So a lot of the guests returning to New Zealand had to isolate for 2 weeks. And then the second main thing was a lot of the guys that I went to the wedding with, they're in corporate offices. They were all, as of the next day, working from home. So it happened really quickly, where it became something that really wasn't an issue, something that we really had to manage quite quickly. And I guess from my perspective, all we've had to do is continue to respond to the government advice, because it's been such a fast evolving issue. and something that I don't think at least Australians have had to deal with before. I know spending some time in Asia that they have more of a grasp on sort of like how to manage pandemics, how to stop spread of pandemics. But it's been a real cultural shift here in Australia, and for me personally running your desk. So yeah, it's been a real challenge.
Yeah. What about you, Kristy?
So I guess I've got two perspectives. One from a personal, where I was actually working for a law firm during the start of the lockdown, where I was made redundant essentially. And that was when we were just starting to work from home. And then from there, I had to actually seek a new role, which was where I landed at Faethm. But from a company perspective, Faethm was working in the offices up until that lockdown period, and then encouraged all their team to work from home from there, giving them their monitors, an office setup fee, and paying for internet so that employees could feel empowered to just work from home and really take care of themselves during this period.
Cool. Yeah. Well, Carl, did you have to close down your offices at that time? Like, what were your members' thoughts when this all started?
We obviously started reacting and started to forward on advice, like the best advice that we were seeing in the media from the government at the time. But the reality was that most businesses were proactive enough to make those decisions on behalf of the health of their people, and they voluntarily all pulled back pretty much simultaneously, to be honest. It was all in the same week, maybe same 2 weeks. And then since then, we've seen a real trend where employers have lost a bit of that power to really dictate how their employees work, and really the employees have much more of a say now, especially around sort of what they're comfortable with health-wise, and maybe also specifically what their situation is at home health-wise that contributes to the risk factors that they're trying to manage. And so, yeah, it's been very individual. We've had some people that continue to work all the way through the lockdown, and especially at the beginning, that was actually quite easy because, you know, we'd have 2 people for every 300 square metre floor. So it was quite well socially distanced. There wasn't a lot that we had to do to manage it. Now, as we're coming into sort of the tail end where a lot more people are coming back into the office, you know, we've got capacity here at Town Hall for about 250 people, and we're seeing up to 40 people a day. So we're hitting maybe 20% capacity. So there's not a lot to manage in terms of like high densities yet, but yeah, it's been a real whirlwind.
It's a big shift from 250 people to 40. What were the people who were coming in felt like did they ask you for advice on what they needed to do, or did all teams have their own kind of COVID rules?
You know, it's funny because I think a lot of people, especially when you run your own business, there is a couple of different ways you can react to a crisis like this. And at least for the members we saw coming into the space, their attitude was really, let's just white knuckle this, really buckle down, see what business is out there, who is interested. You know, maybe even if we start having conversations in March and April and May, that might eventuate into business in, you know, October, November, December. So those people really just took that approach of, look, I'll just keep working on the stuff I can control. And then there was a whole lot of other people who simply didn't have the work. They just, you know, their industries, we've got people here from the travel industry, people here in the events industry and hospitality industries, and they just don't have any work to work on at the moment. So for them, we're trying to support them how we can financially, offering some discounts on their memberships, or even just pausing some memberships in some cases. And we really hope that they come back to us if their industry allows.
Yeah, we've had a similar experience here at Haymarket, where pretty much the same as you guys, like once it all started closing everything down, like everyone just left. But we kept our doors open for those who don't have the ability to work from home and don't have that capacity. And like you, there's like 5 people, 4, and then it's one desk, one pod per person, which is quite very socially distanced. But we also ensure that they felt like we did the cleaning and all of that regularly just to ensure they felt safe. Kristy, with you moved into a new role as it all happened. How was that how did that affect with your role as operations? You probably have to manage all the COVID safety guidelines. Has it all to implement in the team, in the company?
Yeah, definitely. So I was really lucky I've had a lot of experience working remotely. So I think for some people, that's obviously the scariest thing when you go remote is how do you work remote and how do you communicate well with your teams, etc. So onboarding with a team, trying to ensure that we had COVID safe procedures implemented whilst you're working remotely, and trying to onboard to a new team was definitely hard work. But luckily our team is very team focused and really into supporting each other. We definitely saw it as an opportunity for our company to grow from this as a team, and then also building new products that helped other businesses that were going through similar processes, or larger companies with business resilience modules. So from my perspective as a head of operations, we also had to then decide, how do we host strategy days, or like how do we get teams to work together as we are building new products, bringing new customers on, making sales. We were really lucky that business for us throughout this period hasn't been impacted too dramatically. But that also means that everyone's working really hard remotely. So what is their well-being like? So we started working on, first of all, we had all hands twice a week. So we had everyone on the call twice a week to support our UK teams and our New York and San Francisco team members too, to make sure that everyone felt really inclusive, as well as the Sydney team members. And then from there, we had to decide, when it was time to come back to the office, how do we do that safely? And it started with just one team going in on a designated day, or doing offsite out of the office. Our office was previously located in Barangaroo, which is obviously a high density, high population area. And the team members definitely weren't excited about going back to that area, given the population that's there, and how do you get there if it's not via public transport? And so we did a lot of like offsites where team members were meeting like either in the park, they would do walking meetings, lunch meetings at, in public spaces where you could have your social distance. And then it started to encourage then, when the restrictions started to ease a little bit, having meetings inside other people's homes, just in small groups where you could actually host your team members and just keep it quite segregated from the rest of the team. And now that we actually relocated office after all of this, because of the dense population down at Barangaroo, and it just wasn't ideal for our team, and are now in a new office space, which has actually encouraged everyone to come back to the office a lot more. We see around 40% of the team coming to the office quite regularly. On a Wednesday, it's definitely our busiest day, with quite a few of our data science team members coming into, in fact, the entire data science team comes in, and product team and tech team. So it's quite a buzz on Wednesdays, but that was all because of that move, and that people could then ride their bikes to work, they could walk. It's just a little bit closer, a little bit more accessible. So there's all those changes that had to be made too.
Oh, that's interesting to see, like the transition. I know, Barangaroo is very intense, and there's so many people in that area. Where did you guys move?
We actually moved to Martin Place, which sounds crazy because it is probably seems just as busy, but the accessibility for the team members was much better, but also the office space itself is, it's not a 27 floor elevator ride to the office. It's, you can go out into public spaces quite easily. The actual office setting itself has a lot more meeting rooms, open spaces where you can meet each other, lots more pods of desks where we could actually facilitate having those smaller group meetings, but still all work together, but still keep some sort of social distance. And then kitchen facilities is always the hardest thing. Like, how do you ensure that your employees can still have their coffee and tea and lunch, and not have to use all the different cutlery and decide who's cleaning the kitchen. And I know for a lot of co-working spaces, they actually removed a lot of those facilities, and that's all fine, well and good, so long as people have places to go to out somewhere to get food.
Right. What about you, Carl? So Kristy's already covered what they did ensuring safety of people coming back, transitioning. So during that period when restrictions started to ease and people started coming back, what were the measures it took to kind of make your members feel safe that it's okay to come back now to the office?
Sure. I guess, so like I said before, I think now more than ever, people's health is becoming very much an individual decision. So we've done our best to put in best practices. We've got obviously, we've adjusted our meeting room sizes to be socially distanced. We've got hand sanitizer units on every floor. We have policies and signage up everywhere. One thing that we've had to do from an administration point of view is this being a family-run business. There's actually only two of us that run the business day to day. So myself and my dad that run it, we're actually social distancing from each other as well. And all of this is sort of like in service of supporting the members to make sure they're as healthy as possible, but also having a level of defensibility there to make sure that we've followed the best advice. And if we do become unlucky enough to actually have a confirmed COVID case in the building or even amongst our members, we should be able to put our hand on heart and say, look, we really did the best we could, and this was something that was outside of our control.
Yeah, that's good. Did you have to do a lot of communication with your members just to ensure like, hey, this is what we're doing? Because that's something that we did to ensure that kind of preempt all their questions and then talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the advice that we've sent our members has been advice that's already been released in the media, and I think for the most part, a lot of people have really been following the advice quite closely themselves anyway. And that really plays into how people are managing their own health expectations. So for the most part, I mean, we've obviously got our own COVID plan in place. We've been a COVID registered business. But then similarly, we've got a lot of other businesses in here that have also done their own version of that and also registered their own business plan with the New South Wales government.
Yeah.
So I think they've just as much taught themselves about what the risks and concerns are as they have from learning from us. And so all we're here is to be that second line of defence to support our businesses to the best of, to whatever level they need.
That's great. Great to see this happening. So let's look at the time. We don't have a lot of time left. Maybe if you guys have questions, you can put it in the group chat and we'll have a look. So my question now is, with all of this happening, what do you see as going to be the standard for offices in the future? Like, what would it look like for someone who runs a co-working space? Like, all these safety measures, are they going to be in place pretty much in the coming years? Or like with Kristy, with your teams, how do you see the work setup becoming in the future?
Yeah, I know our team, we've obviously got offices all over, so we're used to working remotely or remotely as per se when you're working with teams that are global. I think our team will still enjoy coming into the office space. There's a lot that comes from having those face-to-face meetings, getting a whiteboard out, flashing ideas around the room, getting immediate feedback. But having the team members have that ability to work from home now too is quite important. They're set up, they have the facilities, the precedent has been set, the cadence has been set, you know what the pace is like. So it's seamless to work from home versus working from the office as well. So just having a bit more flexibility. But as Carl touched before, employees are more worried, they're going to stand up for themselves. So we can't really tell them what to do. We're just more the vehicle for how can they facilitate their health and look after themselves, plus get their job done.
Yeah. Carl.
For me, I think there's going to be a couple of things. So obviously, like I touched on hand sanitizer, I don't see that's a thing that we'll be able to remove at any point in the next couple of years. I think some things have become culturally quite ingrained very quickly into sort of like how offices operate. I'd be interested to see whether people start to address densities that sort of sit around that, 4 square meters per person rule that's being sort of universally accepted worldwide. And frankly, it'd be pretty folly to design a new co-working space in 2021 and sort of not incorporate that sort of advice into how you're designing in the future. So I think we will see some changes. I'm really excited to see people starting to work from home, because it might move the bias of hours worked to work completed. And I would expect that our membership will become much more flexible. So it won't be normal now to see every team in every day. It will be much more normal to have guys sort of coming in, coming out. Maybe they work one day at home a week. Maybe they only work one day in the office a week. But I think everyone will start to, like Kristy said, set their own cadence, figure out what works best for them, what works best for their role within their company and within the management team of that company. And possibly co-working spaces might need to consider offering some more flexible products to continue to support that changing flexibility that people demand in their workspace these days.
Is that something you'd consider in the future? Like offering new membership type offerings for?
Well, I mean, like through the pandemic so far, the majority of the business that we have signed up have been all hot desk members. So they're looking for a more cost-effective solution that's very flexible, something where they can get away and come to the office. But even though our memberships are designed so that people can work in here 5 days a week, we almost never see that happening. And so I would expect that cohort of people who want to work on a part-time basis to grow quite a lot. And we may change some of our open plan desks into additional hot desks to continue to support that shift in how people work.
Get them excited about coming back to work again. Get out of your activewear and get to the office. Yeah.
I guess
and look, touch base with people and start to socialize, because I think mental health is going to become, I think mental health is a really big issue. We've already seen people talk about increased domestic violence at home, increased suicide rates, increased depression and mental health issues. And I think there's no denying that at least a factor in that is people's disconnect from their community, from their colleagues, from their friends. And I hope that when there's a vaccine and when we can return properly back to normal, that people will really look to engage, but more in a quality way more than quantity.
Cool. Well, I have a question that came in just now from Vito. So I think, Carl, you'd be the best person to answer this. How cooperative have landlords been over the past few months?
I mean, so I've got 3 landlords, and they've all been very, very good. I got to say, I feel quite lucky just being in Australia at the moment, because we're getting a lot of support from landlords, whether they want to give it or not. We're getting a lot of support from the government, both federal, both state, and as well with councils. So the landlords have, 2 of my landlords have been fantastic. I send them my P&L for the last 12 months. I send them forecasts for what I think is going to happen in the next month, and we just have an honest and open conversation. And at the end of the day, I think that is really helping them understand sort of the risks that we're managing, because a lot of landlords never really understood co-working. And frankly, now some of them are realizing that actually this might be in competition to what I do, rather than something that I can just keep leasing space out. And that's an individual way to sort of like categorize how co-working does or doesn't work with landlords. But it's definitely the right time to start having conversations with landlords about things like, how can you manage some of your downside if you do, drop below your break-even point, for example. Like, is there something you can do with your landlord to help you maybe reduce some risk, or at least defer some of that to a later date to help you sort of like get through the downtime?
That's good. There's a lot of, I think we see a lot of people coming together during this time as well. It's not something we've all experienced, so it's good that you're getting that support as well during this time.
Yeah, I mean, I've always considered landlords to be a bit of a bully.
Yeah.
They have a very ingrained structure on sort of how they want to manage their asset, how they want to manage the risk with that asset. And that's fine, I understand, because, you know, property is really, really expensive. But just like we're seeing with the employer-employee relationship and how that power dynamic's shifting a little bit, I think we're seeing a very similar thing between tenants and landlords, where they're realizing, at least for the short term, for the next sort of 6 months to possibly 6 years for commercial, us, the tenants, might have a bit more bargaining power to craft a deal together that makes sense for your business.
There's one last follow-up question before we wrap up. Do you see there being an opportunity to open up space outside of CBD in the suburbs, in suburbia?
Yeah,
I think,
100%.
Yeah. Employees that are living out those places where they commute into the city via public transport will obviously be looking for something close to home, or an option to not work from home, I think too, which is, it'll be interesting to see how real estate works in Sydney over the next, I don't know, 2 years, I guess.
Well, and like you said, Kristy, you know, you moved from Barangaroo to Martin Place, which seems to be, you know, a couple of blocks up the road, but the reality is that just opened up access, and that works for that team. And I think that will be the longer term discussion that a lot of teams have is, you know, like, is the city still the best place for you guys, or would you prefer we move to somewhere like, I don't know, Chatswood or Liverpool, or, you know, Geelong, or is there a better region that we can move to that allows you to access our team better when you want to come in?
Yeah, great. I see Fiona is an advocate of moving out of the CBD as well. So I think that's a growing sentiment for everybody, which was also mentioned in our last chat last week. It's 8:30 now, so I think we'll wrap this up. Thanks, Carl and Kristy, and for those of you who joined us today, we'll just give you a little round of applause.
Thanks for having me, Lauren.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
See you later.